you for joining us. And I'm so glad to have one of our co-founders, a fellow co-founder of Ovis, with us tonight because it's always so much better when Tracy Grant is here with us because we both are have her insight and us together to be able to talk about the things that are important and especially about Ovis. Um, it's great to have her perspective. So, yay, Tracy's here. Everybody, welcome to our weekly Sunday night show, ZapChat, Ovis ZapChat. It's for news nerds, but you don't have to be a nerd, or you don't even have to be totally about news, just about the truth. Because what we like to do is start off our interview segments by telling you a little bit about Ovis and our community and what we're all about.
Well, I mean, first of all, I'd like to clear up the fact that I'm really not a nerd. So
I am, but I'm okay.
Kidding.
I'm totally comfortable with that by
now. But the rest of us, people out there who are watching, we know that. Gosh, I know a lot of people who used to always say, "Oh, I don't watch the news. I don't read the news." But I'd say this election cycle, which keeps on going, as we know right now in the state of Georgia, a lot more people are involved in what's happening in the news every day. And Ovis is basically trying to change a lot of what we see and read in the news these days. I mean, there's a lot of talk about fake news out there. And as you and I know, Elsa, I mean, we've both worked as journalists for many years. And I believe that at heart, most journalists are really out there trying to get to the truth and bring it out into the forefront, but are hampered in many ways by commercial interests that are sometimes, standing in the way of the truth. So what Ovis is doing is trying to bring the truth to the forefront. And that's what we do here at ZapChat every Sunday night. You and I.
And also, absolutely, we talk about the fact that we're also the only news outlet and community that is using blockchain technology and a token curated registry to get rid of the fake news, the misinfo, the disinformation. We've talked about deep fakes, manipulated video, pictures, and everything that falls under that umbrella. So we're actually one of the first outlets and communities that's going to be using technology to eradicate all of that stuff and also allow consensus within the community about what kind of stories they want to see covered. It's also a place where community members can access the fact checkers, the community of fact checkers that we are continuing to grow in our community, to ask them directly and present information to them, stories, pictures, video, whatever it is that they think might not be factual. They can work that out with one of our fact checkers that they choose and kind of get a verdict on some of the information that they may have doubts about that they've seen on social media or the internet or whatever, wherever they found it. So that's how we're going to be holding everyone in the community accountable. Technology, blockchain technology, and a token curated registry. We have information about those technologies and more on our website at ovis.news. We want this to be a place to go for you to know that everything you're reading and seeing and consuming in our community is going to be fact checked. It's going to be accurate by our fact checkers, and our team of journalists too are also going to continue to grow as well.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you have brought up fact checkers because, I mean, we have one of the best working for us who's heading up our team here at Ovis, a young man named Karen Manal, and he is leading the pack for us when we are doing stories. He's the guy out there who is going to make sure that the material that you are seeing, that you are reading, is correct. And a lot of people don't realize there is a real science to fact checking. It's not just, this this guy told me this, and so that's the way it is. Right,
or
Karen?
a quick search, right? There, it's not just about a
Right,
quick
it's
search.
not just
You're
a
right,
Google
Tracy.
search or
Yep.
something. Right, Karen?
Hello, hello.
Hi, Karam. You know, Tracy, I've been calling Karam our chief fact checker, which he is, but you know, we've talked about, like you brought up, Tracy, the science of fact checking and how it goes beyond. It takes, quite honestly, it takes a lot of work, and a lot of people don't want to or don't have the time to do the work to find out and do all the things that are necessary to find out whether or not something is true or if it's misinformation. I mean, so you know, I could see how people can easily get led astray too, because a lot of the misinformation plays on people's emotions. And what we're talking about today with Karam, big news today that the Secretary of State of Georgia had recorded a conversation with President Trump about the election, and there were some claims made by the president during these secretly taped conversations by the Secretary of State of Georgia that continue or seem to continue to fuel the narrative that the election wasn't legitimate and that there were problems with the machines, the voting machines, and that you know, Trump made claims, Karam, that votes were shredded in Georgia. So there was a lot to take in from this hour-long tape that the Secretary of State recorded, which, by the way, it's a one-party state, so he was within his legal right to be able to record the conversation without the president's knowledge, just to clear that up. Not every state is like that,
Right.
But Georgia is. So he was well within his right to record that. So, Karam, some of the things that we just threw out there that the president specifically talked about in these tapes. Let's talk about some of those things.
Yeah. Well, it was, like you said, an hour-long conversation, and there are a couple of other people in the conversation as well. I think Ryan Germany, his general counsel, was also on the conversation, chiming in, and a couple of people that I can't remember right now. And yeah, Trump did to tell a couple of misinformation that are mostly broadly known. Like, he said that he won the election in Georgia, which is not true. He did not win the election in Georgia. He said that there were dead people voting, which has been going on, you know, since the election day. People have been saying that dead people have been voting, and you know, there's just no evidence of that. There are some cases that were found, and there were charges put against people who did that, but that was kind of it. It's not like a huge fraud, as the president puts it. And the main kind of two things he talked about in the conversation was the Dominion machines were being changed and were being taken out of state. Here, Ryan Germany interjected and said that that is not true in the conversation. So if you listen to the conversation there, he actually says that live, well, not live, but to the president himself. And he said that it was the machines were not moved and they were not internally changed, is what the president tried to explain. Another one of the big misinformation that he was talking about in the conversation was the shredding of 3,000 pounds of ballots, which is a quote from what Trump said. So this can be found from, well, the attorney Linwood, who is kind of spreading conspiracy and theories around Twitter these days, and through a lot of QAnon pages, shredding ballots have been thrown out there, and there's just no evidence of shredding ballots. Linwood posts a picture of a shredding machine of a company that does shredding, and what the fact is that company has been doing election related shredding for years, and they just do things, not ballots, but you know, things that need to be shredded because there are a lot of personal information involved in the election. So that's what their jobs are. It's not 3,000 pounds of ballots that had Trump vote on. So yeah.
So of course the problem is, Karam, that now these tapes come out of Trump. He makes these claims, and that, of course, then incites instability and chaos and disruption.
Of course, I mean, the highest power of the country is saying rumors, basically, to an official. and people take that as truth, right? I mean, you take what the president says as truthful. Well, in this case, it's not. It's not the truth, and people, base their facts on what the president says, and well, you shouldn't do that.
I found all of this fascinating. This phone call today, and as you pointed out, Elsa, Raffensperger was well within his rights to actually record this call. It's interesting now that it has been released. It gives voters. We're talking 2 days before the election. It gives them an interesting picture of the last minute scrambling going on right now. I mean, this election is obviously incredibly important for Republicans and Democrats, and with only 2 days to go, we will probably see people making a lot of last minute claims that there might not be time for people to dispute, for people to, if they were saying some of these things even a week ago, it might have been easier to say, no, this is not true, and here's exactly why, here's the information, blah, blah, blah. But, you're very good at finding out this type of information, Karen, but the average person who, is going to run to a polling place right after work and is making dinner with their kids tonight, it isn't going to be, scouring the internet necessarily tonight trying to figure out, well, what happened on this call? Is that true? 3,000 pounds?
Oh, well, that's what Trump said. That's what I think
exactly.
the score is. So, yeah. Also, just a quick fact check. We don't know exactly who published, who gave the Washington Post, the voice, so the recordings. So it might not be Raffensperger, just adding that there.
Right.
Right.
The tapes were made available to the media.
Right.
Whether or not it was directly from the Secretary of State or someone
Right,
in his office, or what, that we cannot verify, but we can verify that the tapes are real and that the media was able to obtain them somehow.
Yeah.
All right. Karam, unless Tracy, you have anything else to ask Karam about today's tapes with Trump, or actually I do have one more quick thing. You talked about the voting machines. Actually, Trump talked about the voting machines in today's tapes and claimed that the actual machinery inside some of the voting machines were either swapped or taken out or manipulated somehow, and that the voting machines were taken away. Can you see this information that the president said in this tape having an impact on people questioning whether or not, when they go to the polls on Tuesday for this runoff election in Georgia, can you see people questioning whether or not, if they're not sure about what they're hearing on tape from the president, whether or not their vote will actually be counted? And how does that cause disruption?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I don't know exactly on this situation, but it has happened before. I mean, this is not the first time the president has said something not true, right? So we have seen people believing the conspiracies and believing the things that Trump has been saying throughout his presidency. And this will be just added to that. I mean, people just, even a doubt on a person's mind might change their vote. And right now, that's 1 day before, 2 days before the election. That's a very important demographic, trying to change people's minds and trying to invoke that we always talk about, the emotional side of people. And I think this kind of plays into that. I mean, it's the president saying a conspiracy theory, basically, a QAnon conspiracy theory, and he's amplifying that. And that's very scary.
Well, thank you so much, Karam. It's always a pleasure to see you, my friend. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
All right, Karam, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Our next guest is someone that has joined us before, and I always get very excited when he joins us because I Tracy, I knew him from the days I worked at CBS here in Los Angeles. He always gave excellent political commentary and analysis. And he's joining us again tonight. Jack Pitney, a professor of American politics at Claremont McKenna College here in Southern California, and author of his latest book, Un-American, the fake patriotism of Donald J. Trump. So, Jack, thank you for being here again. We really appreciate your time. I know
Thank
you're
you,
very well
Jack.
aware of course, I know you're very well aware of the tapes that were released today to the media involving the Georgia Secretary of State and President Trump. I guess I don't know. Does it surprise you at this point that you are hearing the information that we heard on the tapes today coming from the president?
In one sense, it's a surprise. In another sense, that it isn't. That Trump would be trying to pull something like this at this late date, once after the states have certified the votes, after the electoral votes have been cast. That's unusual, but it's also very much in character for Donald Trump. Toward the end of my book, I write that the danger is not that Trump would barricade himself in the White House, but he would encourage people not to accept the results. That's totally in character, totally consistent with things he said in 2016. He said he wouldn't necessarily accept the result if he lost. Even in 2012, when Romney was running, there was one point in which he thought that Obama was going to win the electoral vote while losing the popular vote, and he tweeted that the Electoral College is a disgrace to democracy, which is a little different from his attitude later on. So this is very much in character for Donald Trump, and that character is why I wrote the book.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. I mean, we are in, less than 48 hours before the polls will close in Georgia. And I mean, this is where it will be decided who's in control of the Senate. Some people are saying that that in a way, it kind of doesn't matter necessarily who gains control, because it in the end, after a 4-year process of dealing with Trump and his devotees in Congress, it would take a while to sort of shake off some of that. Do you believe that's the case?
Well, it does make a great deal of difference, even though it's only 2 seats. Those 2 seats are the difference between a slate of Democrats chairing the committees in the House of Representatives and a slate of Republicans. It's the difference between Biden being able to get his judicial appointments confirmed and not being able to get all of them confirmed. The control of the Senate is very, very important. We discovered that in 2001. We had the very same situation, a 50-50 Senate, vice president breaking the tie. In that case, it was Dick Cheney breaking it in favor of the Republicans. And so it is very consequential whether the 2 seats flip in Georgia. And right now, nobody knows what's going to happen.
Considering how consequential it is, Jack, I mean, the stakes are so incredibly high for this particular runoff election because of all the reasons you stated. So knowing that and hearing what we all heard on the tapes today, how do you think that truly impacts the people heading to the polls, and how it influences or doesn't influence their last minute decisions or decisions at all?
Well, it's a great question. Well, first, a large chunk of the vote has already been cast. There has been a great deal of early voting, mail voting, so it's obviously not going to affect those ballots. The question, and nobody knows, is how many people are going to show up on Tuesday. Republicans have said that a heavy election day vote would benefit them. That may well be true. But this injects a level of uncertainty, and it doesn't. It's not just today's revelation. A couple of days ago, Trump tweeted that the election in Georgia was illegal. And that can't help the Republicans. If you have the president saying the election is illegal, that might lead some Republicans not to bother voting. He's gotten into a feud with the governor, and the governor is off the campaign trail. That's not helping the Republicans either. So it's a close election. The Republicans very well could win this. But on balance, Trump has been more of a detriment than an asset.
What's it like? What do you believe it's like for these candidates in this, in this last minute, these last couple of days? Especially, we were talking earlier about this phone call with Trump. And if you are a Republican candidate whose future is hanging in the balance right now, and recording is released of a phone call that the president has with the content that we were talking about earlier. I mean, what is that like for them? Do you know? I mean, what as a strategist, what do you even do from here?
Well, to quote Don Draper in Mad Men, if you don't like what's being said, change the conversation. You desperately try to change the subject. The chair of the Georgia State Republican Party was saying, well, this was actually a private settlement conference and a lawsuit, so it's terrible that this stuff gets released. Now, if you actually read the transcript or listened to the conversation, that was not a legal settlement meeting by any stretch. But you try to change the subject, divert people's attention from what Trump did, which is arguably a crime under both federal law and Georgia law. Not a good look. And so the Republicans will say this is a diversion from the issues we want to talk about, which is defunding the police and the other priorities. Democrats, it's much simpler. They can talk about outsiders trying to invalidate the votes of Georgians. And that's a message we're going to see from the Democrats over the next 24 hours.
Jackie said some of the things that Trump said today on those tapes is potentially a crime. Specifically, of all the things he said, are you referring to the part of the tapes where he is asking the Secretary of State to find votes for him? Is this the potentially illegal part?
Yes, the lawyers who've weighed in on this have come to somewhat different conclusions, whether it's a clear violation of a federal law dealing with federal elections, trying to influence the vote tabulation. There's also a section of Georgia law that deals with solicitation of election fraud. And some very smart lawyers are saying that both of those statutory provisions apply here. And what's hurtful to Trump is this. He might try to pardon himself, give himself a blanket pardon before Inauguration Day. The trouble is, a president can't pardon for a state offense. Even if the president is allowed to pardon himself, which is not agreed to by constitutional scholar Jessica Levinson, whom I know you know very well, has written on this, and she argues very persuasively that self-pardon is not permissible. But even if it were, the president can't do anything about state offenses, so he could be in some legal jeopardy here.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. It really is. And I mean, no matter what, duking it out at the last minute like this was going to be fascinating to watch. But this situation now with this tape takes it into another realm, really. I mean, you've been following this all along. I mean, obviously, we're not on the ground in Georgia, but from what you've seen in the media, have you really gotten a feel for the way this campaign has been run in terms of the messaging, in terms of which side is there a clear division between which side is on which side in terms of the Republicans and the Democrats? Do people going out there know exactly what this determines?
Oh, yeah. This has been an election where there's no shortage of material on both sides. It will end up being among the most expensive elections in American history. In fact, the airwaves have surpassed the saturation point. If you ran an ad on television, at this point, it's not going to have much additional impact. The key thing, and it's the cliche, it all comes down to turnout, which it does. And the Democrats have developed a very effective operation thanks to Stacey Abrams. After her defeat for governor, this is what she concentrated on, and that was a major reason why Joe Biden was able to carry the state of Georgia. And that organization is going all out for Ossoff and Warnock. Is it going to be enough? The Republicans also have a very skillful and professional get out the vote operation. They're going to be turning out their vote. We'll see how successful they are in getting their election day vote out.
All right, Jack Pitney, as always, a pleasure. Jack Pitney, professor of American politics at Claremont McKenna College here in Southern California, also former Republican opposition researcher and current author of several books, his latest, Un-American, The Fake Patriotism of Donald J. Trump. Pick it up if you are interested. I'm sure Jack would very much appreciate it. Jack,
going on Amazon right after
this. We do, as always, appreciate your time with us here with the News Nerds on ZapChat for Ovis. So thank you very much, Jack. We appreciate it.
Thank you.